Counter-Narrative News wanted to explore an important part of the story of the grassroots this last decade or so around the issue of quote-unquote UK Black Lives Matter or quote-unquote UKBLM. UKBLM seems to be finished as an organisation now. It's inactive. It still has some social media accounts, but for all intents and purposes, it is no longer active in any real, actual sense in real life. So a few reflective remarks about their political history and behaviour and class composition. It's not meant to be an exhaustive historical account, but some issues that are perhaps important for people to be informed about and to also discuss and explore. So Black Lives Matter is a kind of a franchise. It's not narrowly an organisation, but it has its manifestation in the British context around the title quote-unquote UK, that's for United Kingdom BLM. It arises around the period of 2015-2016. The Malcolm X movement, which also has its first public event in the June 2014 but launches in the spring of 2015, had some experiences directly with figures in the UK BLM. One particular figure based in Brighton tried to wrangle £500 out of a Malcolm X movement launch in that city, to which the MXM blocked. That produced an interesting political discussion with the said individual, who tried to push back on the blocking of that money by arguing that it was important for a form of black capitalism to emerge, to which the Malcolm X movement countered that the Malcolm X movement believed in a radical black socialism as practiced by, for example, the Black Panther Party, and it is much more oriented not in a middle class careerist orientation of grift and money making and corruption, but on a quote-unquote serve the people radical strategy in serving the grassroots towards sacrifice, delivering what people need, their enjoyment, their unity, and towards liberation. In the same period of around 2015, there are two strong black liberation, like black power socialist organizations engaging thousands of youths, which are the Malcolm X movement, as aforementioned, and London Black Revs. The UKBLM, for its part, ends up in part being a direct counter-revolutionary sellout attack on both the Malcolm X movement and London Black Revs. MXN and LBR are radical grassroots-oriented towards radical black-led political youth cultures and oriented towards our communities on the council estates. UKBLM, on the other hand, and in contrast and counter-distinction, is middle-class, careerist and grift-oriented. The UKBLM de facto dances to the strategies of the British colonial state on a number of issues, and there's about 5 or 6 issues here we're going to go through. Firstly, putting UK, the United Kingdom, in your title is quite deeply problematic, to say the least, as it endorses an openly toxic manifestation of British political colonialism by incorporating the ongoing colony of the occupied 6 counties in your name. In contrast, the Malcolm X movement's first launch event was an occupied island on the Falls Road in West Belfast, giving primacy and importance to and solidarity with the ongoing historical struggle of the Irish to free their country from British colonial rule. 2. The UKBLM forces enter the political community to attempt to degrade and destroy London Black Revs, which is basically successful, as London Black Revs is finished as an active organisation by around 2017, although LBR then enters into some alliances and actions and initiatives with the Malcolm X movement, producing the historic victories against racism, especially against the Byron-Home Office collusion in entrapping so-called illegal staff for incarcerating them, basically, and deportation. And also the historic victory against racism on June the 13th, 2020. More of that in a second. 3. Senior members of the UKBLM also took positions in open support of the British state-backed death squads in Libya during the Nato war of destruction against the 41-year-old Pan-African, Pan-Arabist socialist state in Libya. This includes senior UKBLM figures, including Adam Cooper and the Younis brothers, who seem to be under the influence of the open death squad cheerleader Hicham Yezza. all these individuals have been refusing to engage and to be held to account for this quite horrific and historic sellouts. 4. During the George Floyd Summer of Struggle in 2020, the UKBLM and allied networks such as Temi Mwale's grifting racket of the Forefront Project sees UKBLM circles act very similarly to the Western left, in that during the BLM protests in Parliament Square and Whitehall, when the council estate crews were fighting back police brutality day after day, as soon as that grassroots resistance started by our youth, the UKBLM and associated networks literally ran away and were nowhere to be seen. I myself still have lots of footage of these incidents and was in part observing and participating in those events. Actually, the Forefront Project, like other UKBLM figures, would wax lyrically and posture on the BLM protests about this or that and the other. But then as soon as the youth were actually engaged in practical resistance against police and racism, they ran away and were nowhere to be seen. Of course, Temi Mwale from the Forefront Project, along with convicted violent rapist, so-called Fidel Santigi, both pulled a knife on the other leader of the London Black Revs, that's Arnie, after the Westfield shopping centre shut down in Shepherd's Bush in December 2014. 5. UKBLM engages in profound corruption and opportunism in taking millions of pounds in donations in the summer of 2020 and gives it out to their friends and friendly organisations. One would have thought millions of pounds of investments into the grassroots should see a clear uptick of militant struggle at the grassroots, but this investment sees the radical black-red grassroots continue to collapse month on month, year on year after the summer of 2020, indicating that these organisations aren't necessarily committed to a strategic commitment of raising black resistance in this country. 6. Even on a political framework of uniting grassroots youth as quote-unquote black-led, the UKBLM has fed into colonial racist divisions and never wanted to, and failed to give leadership to the council estate youth of many different racialised categories, and in so doing refused to give leadership in uniting frameworks of our grassroots youth under black leadership, in line with the long-standing and well-established black power political culture and traditions in England, as shown nearly by the entire radical leadership and grassroots from the 1960s into the 1980s. Actually, UKBLM has fed at times open anti-Asian racism into the movement, with members of the MXM and LBR being subjected to this colonial racist chauvinism many times by such circles. What this has done is contribute to the growing disunity politically at the grassroots. However, in the actual class struggle, including the summer of 2020, the council estate youth showed their own spontaneous and much more healthier and positive framework of black power and black-led grassroots, unifying African, Asian Caribbean, African Caribbean, Latin American, African of all regions, including the North Africa, and Asian heritage youth united in a black power framework of actual struggle. In conclusion, in this current time, the UKBLM has finally ceased to be active. Their contribution as an organisation, as a formal organisation, has been quite destructive in actively blocking the potential of radical black youth at the grassroots and council estates. The UKBLM has produced next to no people who are committed to or from the grassroots, as their class character and orientation was always middle class and actually tied to a lot of colonial behaviour in line with the British state's interests and agendas. Today, the Malcolm X movement and related networks continue to give leadership across the country, and especially in London and Oxford. Of course, this is still a terrible state of affairs relatively, as the MXM-related networks are, although growing fast, are still small and need a lot more engagement and organising of further amounts of people and youth in meeting the growing challenges of the class struggle, the Black Power socialist liberation struggle today. The MXM is, in a seamless connection, loyalty and intergenerational unity with those leading organisations and leadership globally, historically and currently of our struggle, actively working with people like Bob Brown, the Black Panther leadership in the USA, Professor Gus John, Eric Huntley, the radical wings of the Asian youth movements, the Brixton Panthers, leading liberation leaders and networks in Africa, the Middle East, the Arab world, India, the Caribbean and other regions. We are involved in a number of grassroots works and openly invite maximum engagement of anyone interested in black liberation and anti-colonial socialism to get involved with this important work. Hope that was some interest and create some interesting reflections, but more importantly, reflections based on a commitment increasingly in the necessary black liberation work that our communities so desperately and increasingly need. Many thanks.